Okay, back with the tracker again. Thought I'd show you progress I made. Quick interim. One thing, can't remember if I showed you this, but I closed off this old hole for the live well. I don't need an intake for it, so that's closed off and gone. For this transom support here, I went ahead and added 3 new bolts in there, hardware, because it only had these 2. These are a little bit rusted, so that's all fixed. To support this part of the framing, which is where the back hatch hinge sits, and there's a lot of deck weight here, because especially if there's a seat here, it's just a lot of weight. I went ahead and put this under here, because before it was only supported by this little tiny weld, nothing else. So I put this under here, and then I just kind of tack welded it a few places down there at the bottom, and then right here. It's kind of hard to weld here because this is really hard to clean with these grooves. Just couldn't quite get it cleaned perfect, so it looks pretty bad. Same thing over here. I fixed that one too, same way. My framing is done for the most part in here. What I have done is up here in the front, this is going to be a storage area. Sits right behind the bench where the driver's or the pilot seat is, captain. So I got just some angle in here to hold up all this stuff. This is where the bottom piece of the floor will go, and then there'll be a back wall here. Put a thin little piece of aluminum here just because it's easier to bend and shape around this curving cutout corner here. So I did just trying to minimize stuff that goes in there, and then this thicker piece that's can't really bend very easily will go there. If I had an aluminum or a metal brake, it'd be nice, but I already bought too much stuff for this project. I'm not going to buy a metal brake. So that's that. Oh, and then you can't really see it here, but this is where the live well hose went all the way through up to the live well up there. So don't need it. I went ahead and closed it off. I added this piece of angle here because this is what's going to support the little subfloor there. And back here, I tacked this piece to it. It doesn't really need to be welded. It's not holding any weight, but I don't want to put rivets through the hull, so I welded that in place. It's just going to be the back kind of cleat to hold up the thing, hold up the subfloor. And then I think I mentioned last time, this piece of angle here was all that was kind of supporting the deck, and it had those 3 big channels going across, and it's only welded here, here, and there. So it wasn't good enough, and then it's also too dirty in there to clean. I can't get that clean enough to try to weld it. Tried on the other side, didn't work very good. So there's no adding additional welds here. I don't want to put a bunch of rivets through it, so I added another little piece of angle up here, and just basically welded this angle to the side of the boat, welded it to this existing piece of angle, and that should strengthen it up a lot. Also extended it all the way up here so it can support the deck all the way. And then this is also going to be a little storage area with a hinged hatch that opens like that. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And then once I'm done, I'll show you on this other side. See, these are those repurposed little thin pieces of aluminum. They were just sliding all the way under like that, just to keep the foam from getting all the way to the hull itself. That pour foam, they just poured it right on there, and I showed you all that corrosion from it before. So now I put it in here to make a little subfloor. I'll do the same thing on the other side, and all the EVA foam, or not the EVA foam, the extruded polystyrene or whatever, is going to go in here, and it'll be up above the floor and hopefully not get waterlogged very easily. And then this is the little storage area. Had to add a piece of thick 1/8 inch angle here, and then I got it, you know, bolted and welded that side, bolted and welded on this side, and then I'll you know, put in this floor. This is like I think it's 10,000ths 0.010 aluminum. These are just the angles. None of this really needs to be welded, but I did this support cleat on this side. I welded it because I didn't want to shoot rivets through the hull or through the side of the boat. So that's just welded just to keep it waterproof. And that's what it'll more or less look like. This boat does have kind of like a little mini side that comes down right here and kind of goes up there just to hide electronics and wiring and whatever. So I will have to add one more piece of aluminum here because the deck, you know, covers this whole area, and I'll just run like a 1.5 inch wide piece of angle here, just like this one, and then that side will sit in the middle, and then the deck will hatch lid will sit in the middle that opens up, so it'll support the hatch and support this side. I have to figure out exactly where that needs to go. Okay, that's interim progress. We'll keep working. Okay, here we are. Finally got finished with most of the work except for that center transom support. Anyway, this is all put back together, and it's essentially ready for the decking. Show you what I did here. Obviously, I already told you about some things with the live well and bilge pump, and then put this support up under here, support this piece, which is important. Got this little storage area framed out and got a back wall on it and a little floor. This is where the edge of the hatch will sit, you know, there. I'm just going to cut that right out of the deck, and then it'll just kind of open up this way. Put a little piano hinge in there. All these things, if you remember from an earlier video, were when I pulled the deck off, these are broken off completely and just laying down on top of the foam in there. So I'm glad that foam is out of there. I got new foam. I put the subfloor in there, as you saw on the other side, where it's none of this foam is touching the bottom. It's all suspended at least 1.5 inches off the bottom with these hat channels that go across there. I reinforced them with bolts, and then I re-welded them back on. And again, I just put a 1/4 inch bolt through there, welded it back in. I found these little they have Allen wrench or hex head, whatever you call that there, but they're really flat compared to most screws and bolts, so it won't affect the deck a whole lot. My deck will still be a little lumpy looking, but that's okay. But yeah, everything that's welded back here under this deck is bolted and welded. Hope this will strengthen it a lot. This one in the back was not broken. I went ahead and put a bolt here, and then I put a bolt here, but I really couldn't get up in there very easily to put a bolt, and this is not overlapping enough to bolt through that. Back here in the corner it is overlapping enough, but I just couldn't get in there to put one, so I don't think it really needs a bolt there. Like I said, despite all these other welds being broken and all the rivets broken, this one's still held on, and it's mostly because there's another piece of angle that goes here. So once I get the deck on there, then I'll put this piece of angle through there, and you see it bolts through the transom and through that, and it just gives a lot of extra transom support, and then also supports that back hatch handle. Yeah, and here we go on this side, same kind of thing. This one, you can see they mounted it in a way I didn't have, you know, that was, or I mounted it when I took this off. Sorry, that's right, I had to take it off and redo it. These are my welds, yep, and I put 2 bolts in there. I was only able to get 1 bolt back in there. That's my weld, but I couldn't get the bolt back in there, but just that's fine. Again, it's going to have this piece of angle here that'll bolt through it, support it. And here you can see a mistake where I blew through that, It's like I started here, which is, you know, thicker, and then by the time you get out here, it gets pretty hot. I don't have a foot pedal with my welder, just using the on-off trigger. So by the time you get out here, it gets hot. I should be letting off of the amperage, but it blew through. And then I didn't wait long enough to try to, I was going to try to like fill it in with some weld, but then I blew through again. It's like, oh hell, I'll just leave it. It doesn't really matter. This is hold it. That's plenty of weld. It'll hold. It's not critical, but I do need to come back and cut that off, make that smooth. So I guess it's all gonna be hidden. Doesn't matter. And here's this other side. These, I'm really excited to have these storage channels or storage compartments in here. They're not that big, but every little bit of storage on the boat really helps, and that will give me a place to stick life jackets or extra battery or gas or shotgun shells or whatever I want in there. It's not going to be dry. This is not dry storage, but that's okay. It just keeps stuff out of the way. Again, each of these compartment, this is a 1 4x8 sheet of that rigid foam insulation, 1.5 inches thick, so that comes out to be 4 cubic feet. Another 4 cubic feet over here. So right now I got about 28 plus 8 is 36 plus 4. I got about 40 cubic feet in here, and I only really needed 31. So again, this is not the best product to use for this because it can absorb some water, usually like 2 to 3%, but they said like if it's constantly submerged for several years, you could have, you know, up to 10% water absorption. So, you know, you lose that much flotation. So, you know, absolute worst case scenario, I got 40 cubic feet in here. If I lost 4 cubic feet of flotation, which is 10%, which that will not happen, but let's just say worst case scenario, I lost 10%, I'd be down to 36 cubic feet, which is still 5 more cubic feet than I need to keep this whole rig afloat if it were to become submerged. And then yeah, but so I'm pretty excited to be able to add to my storage and add to the total volume of foam. And that rigid foam is much cheaper. Okay, so now we gotta get to work. There's the back deck right there, and it's got a lot of that EVA foam adhesive still stuck on it, so I got to get to work with some acetone, get all that off. Then I'll install it, cut the hatches out, and we'll get going.